All right, welcome everybody. I think some folks are still logging on now that it is 10 o'clock, but I do want to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Money Talk. Today we are, you and us, we are going on an economic justice resource bonanza. I'm going to give you a tour of our economic justice webpage, and we're going to get, we'll go as deep as you need to, but we're definitely going to go wide on all of the different resources and topics that we have available on our website. So that's me, Tracy Underwood. I coordinate our economic justice project here at Wiskative. That is my contact information. Please feel free to contact me with questions. We also have Sarah Wolf with us here today. You want to say hello, Sarah?
Hi, everyone.
Sarah is our brand new, this is her first day MSW intern. So she will be working with us this year through June. So you may see Sarah out and about and around if you come to our other stuff as well. All right. Our agenda for today, we're going to do a little housekeeping, I'm going to give you some info on technical assistance and training hours, and then we're going to jump in to our EJ webpage tour. There'll be plenty of time for questions and answers, as well as suggestions. I would love to hear from y'all about resources that you use on a regular basis to help survivors with their finances or housing or anything that has to do with money and economics that is missing from our website that we might want to add. And then we'll wrap up and say goodbye. All righty. Oh, it's not advancing. There we go. So if, sorry, technical difficulties. So it's best to listen through your computer speakers. So remember to unmute those speakers. But if that's not working, you can also listen by phone. You can just select telephone, like that little picture says in your control panel, and follow the instructions that it gives you when you do that, if you're having trouble listening through your computer. Everybody's on mute for everybody else's enjoyment, so we don't have office background noise and that kind of a thing, or if you're working from home and you've got a child screaming, I totally get it, but we've got that on mute. So if your computer has a microphone, you can raise your hand, and there's a little hand circled there on the screen, and I can call on you, and I will go down and I'll unmute you, and you can talk to us. You can ask your question or make your comment that way. If your computer doesn't have a microphone and you're not listening through your telephone, then you need to use the questions box, and that's also circled there in your control panel. So you can type in a question, a comment in that questions box, and I will get to it. We will get everybody's questions addressed or comments addressed in due time there from that box. All right. Oops. So your control panel might disappear. That's all right. There's a little orange arrow there in the corner, and you can click on it, and it'll pop back out for you. Training hours. So please fill out the survey evaluation that pops up when you exit this webinar. When you do that, it will give you the opportunity to say who was listening and participating in the webinar, because I know some of you are sitting around one computer and you all don't show up on our login log. So make sure you get everybody's name who participated, and then your training hours will be logged. All right, now we're going to jump into exploring our economic justice webpage. It's really loaded with a ton of info. The address is right here. on your screen. It's great to bookmark. I was just trying to copy it, but I don't think I can to put it in the chat window, but hang on, I can do that. I'm going to put it in I'm going to chat it to everybody, and that way you can copy and paste it into your web browser and make it a bookmark. So it's easy to find later. So it is HTTP, just bear with me one second because I can't copy it for whatever reason. All right, I am chatting it to all of you. There you go. It looks like this when you bring it up, and I'm going to go show you in case you don't go directly there. I can show you how to find it if you're just on our website. But this is what the page looks like, and I am going to go show you that right now as soon as I figure this out. Bear with me. There we are. So if you are here, which is our main website, and you go to projects, find economic justice, and there we are. So we have a lot of information here, and it's kind of all hiding in this little box right here. This is economic justice. We have other information too, some news and featured resources. And then of course our whole idea around why we even talk about money and finances with survivors, which all of you probably already understand and know. But our motto is that we believe women and girls should have access to money, housing, childcare, and education so they can make decisions about their relationships without regard for the financial impact of those decisions. That's our big dreamy dream that we, work towards every day, that you are working towards every day with survivors that you work with. So I'm going to dig in to the first tab, which is jobs and welfare. As I go through the resources, we're not going to click on all of these because, wow, that would be boring for you. But I will click into a few of them to show you a little bit more information. And as we are looking, whenever you have questions, please type them into your questions box or raise your hand because I want to address them as we go along. It doesn't make sense to save them to the very end because then we have to go all the way back to this tab. And, so we're going to try to make this as much of a discussion as we can over webinar, which is always challenging. But please do not hesitate to type in your questions, comments, about the stuff that we're talking about, as we talk about it. So here we have links to different job resources, WorkSource, Employment Security, Craigslist. There's also the Washington Asset Building Coalition, which doesn't necessarily have information about jobs, but it has a lot of links to financial resources on a bunch of different things as well. And then we have information on public benefits. We have a lot of information on public benefits because we know survivors often tap into TANF and child support and other things like that. And so we have resources here specifically geared towards survivors. I mean, we have how to apply online and links to the Workforce Handbook, which has policies, all the policies that the welfare workers are supposed to follow. Section 6.5 is all about family violence. But I want to click into this first one, which is an old brochure, but all the information is still solid. That's called Is It Safe to Say? And this is all about the confidentiality practices at DSHS, at the welfare office, or what we also call the CSO. If I say that, that's what I mean. I mean welfare office. In case you're not familiar with the term CSO, it means community services offices. And that's basically just another name for your welfare office in your community. And so this is a brochure that you can just have on hand, or you can just have for yourself so that you can talk to survivors about what confidentiality looks like at DSHS. But oftentimes it can be challenging for folks who are trying to get help, trying to get financial assistance, but they don't really understand what's happening with all this information that's being gathered by DSHS and where it's going. So this brochure outlines like who can see that information, how they're supposed to behave in the way that they're supposed to access it, but what can happen when people don't follow their policies around who's supposed to access files and who's not. For example, if an abuser's sister works in another office at DSHS, she might be able to get information on that abuser's partner, even though she's not supposed to. So this talks all about that. All right, I'm going to close it now, but you know it's there. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to close it. How do I get out of here? Back. Sorry, you're going to have to bear with my technical challenges today. It's not my forte. So that's that on public benefits. Also on here is some information about administrative hearing requests. So if you're working with folks who are working with DSHS, and that's TANF or ABD or SSDI or food or child support, like anywhere they might be working with DSHS, they have the right to request an administrative hearing if they disagree with a decision that's been made about them, about their case. So if they have something that they disagree with, they can make a request within 90 days of the decision. It doesn't need to be in any particular form. It can be made verbally or in writing, but if you're working with someone, I would encourage you to help them make it in writing because that does help. And it can be made by any responsible, department employee. So to any responsible department employee. So it can be, the person at the front desk. It could be their caseworker. It could be anybody that they get in front of that day, essentially. And then there's that starts a process. And so I'm happy to talk more about that or answer questions. But that is something that every person who is accessing services from DSHS has the right to. They have the right to these administrative hearings. And what it goes before an administrative hearing judge who is not part of DSHS. So they are theoretically a neutral party. And oftentimes it doesn't even go to the quote unquote, trial period. Sometimes it doesn't even go all the way to the judge, because as soon as somebody makes that request, it wakes up the folks at DSHS, and they usually try to work with that person right away to try and fix the problem before it even goes all the way to the administrative hearing judge. So it's a great advocacy tool to have in your back pocket around helping people make sure they get the funding, the finances, their cash assistance or whatnot, or their food that they need if they feel like if a decision has been made that is unfair or is wrong. And then I've got information about 5-year time limit, which happens with TANF. There's a 60-month lifetime time limit, and administrative hearings around that. There are extensions that can happen for family violence, and that card has information about that. We have disability resources here on the ABD, which is Aged, Blind, and Disabled Cash Assistance Program. That's for folks who mostly who don't have kids. It wouldn't qualify for TANF. SSI, SSDI, and other Social Security benefits. There's guides there. There's a lot of links here to Washington Law Help's webpage, because they have a ton of policy and legal information on their website. But here I've tried to pull out the specific pages so you don't have to search their website. You can just come here if it's bookmarked and you're like, oh gosh, I wanted to know about, I need to do some research on this SSDI thing, and you can come here and just click on that. And it'll take you to Washington Law Help's webpage about that specific topic. There's information here about immigrants and refugees receiving cash assistance. That is a very complicated situation when folks are trying to access public benefits. And I really encourage you, if you're working with immigrant survivors, to get connected as much as you can to the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project, or read their stuff that I have linked here. For example, this link around, will using benefits hurt my chances of getting a green card? Well, the answer to that is possibly, and there's a lot of if, then, but maybe, depending on the particulars of each immigrant situation. So it's really great to do your research before encouraging immigrant survivors to get on benefits. If they do have refugee status, however, they can access benefits through refugee cash assistance. So that's another resource that's out there if you do happen to be working with refugee survivors who already have refugee status, which is different than folks who have other statuses or who are undocumented. Your Money Helpline is a tool, online tool that has a bunch of information about debt and credit, student loans, public benefits, like a ton of info. It can be really helpful. You can click around on that. And then child support. Oftentimes survivors find themselves wrapped up in that system, either because they want the non-custodial parent, the parent that doesn't have the kids, to be responsible financially for the child, or because they go on TANF and they don't realize that going on TANF requires you to participate in child support. If you don't know that, that's something that's really important to know. You probably already did, though, and it's great to talk to survivors about if they're on TANF or if they're thinking about going on TANF, that child support cooperation is a requirement unless they can claim good cause, which means that it's too dangerous for them to, that it is not safe for them to seek child support, that they have fears and concerns is the language that they use. Fears and concerns around accessing child support, based on what they think might happen to them or their kids. Most survivors, they would fall into this category, and they can absolutely claim good cause. And this link that I'm going to click on goes to the Division of Child Support's webpage. Actually, it's ESA. But it's a question and answer that WSCDIV helped DCS, the Division of Child Support, create, and that's on their website. And it's a really great, tool to go through with folks who might have questions about that, or just for your reference to know more in the future when you're working with survivors about, how the system works, what protections are available within DCS for survivors, and what might be concerning if they in figuring out, do I want to go after child support, or is it not safe for me to go after child support? So this is a great Q&A here. All right, we're going to pause in a minute for questions and comments. It's a lot of info, but that's what today's about. It's the resource bonanza. We have information about food and food stamps, which is the Washington Basic Food Program, but most people call it food stamps. That's what that is. And resources from the USDA on how to eat right. They call it Eat Right When Money's Tight. So ways to stretch your food stamp dollars. These are some ideas folks have suggested around being able to use food stamp dollars for things that you normally can't buy with food stamps, for like cleaning products and whatnot. And then the last thing that's on this page is unemployment insurance. And so if you didn't know this already, survivors can claim unemployment benefits or file for unemployment if they quit their job, which is normally not something you can do. Normally, if you quit your job, if you're not fired or if you're not laid off, right? If you're not laid off from your job, normally unemployment benefits aren't available to you. But if a survivor quits because it was unsafe for them to continue to be there because of domestic violence situation, then they are eligible or can be eligible for unemployment benefits. And this, employment security website here talks about how. So it says you must show that it was necessary to leave work to protect yourself or your immediate family members from domestic violence or stalking. And then there's some information on here about if they want their current address to be confidential, then they can't file the claim online. They've got to call the center, and they'll try and hook them up with the address confidentiality program so that they can continue that process without divulging the physical address of the survivor. But some survivors might not care about that, and they can say, no, like, I'm not moving, and he already knows where I live. So that's not an issue, but I did have to quit because of this, and I want to make a claim. And they can file online for that. Or they can call also. It's, up to them. But this is something I know survivors have used in the past. I know advocates who have helped survivors get this. And, unemployment benefits are a lot better than TANF. They're like, so if somebody can claim unemployment, that's a lot better option than trying to get cash assistance through the state, because it's going to be more money, most likely. This doesn't, of course, work for folks who are working under the table, who are working at a job that isn't collecting unemployment from their check. That doesn't work for those folks. All right. So we'll come back here for a second. Are there any questions yet? Comments? How are folks doing? I'm going to look for any hands raised. I don't see any hands raised, which is fine. Anything that, any questions you have about the stuff that I just talked about, or anything that you use on a regular basis, resource-wise, when it comes to jobs, welfare, money, cash, cash for survivors, anything that that you tap into on a regular basis that you don't see on here that would be great maybe to have on here, or maybe is just for your particular community, but it would be great to share with others because maybe they should ask, that maybe they have a similar organization who might have that kind of fund for survivors as well. Like anything like that. I'll wait while you type, or you can raise your hands. All right, I don't see any messages yet. All right, if you're still typing, keep typing. We'll come back to it. I'm going to move forward. We're going to go on to money and finances. I'll click on that and see if it comes up for me. Oh, look, it does. Money and finances. So here's my pitch for you on this topic. Talking about financial stuff, offering financial education opportunities for survivors is really awesome if you can do it. I know some agencies already have that worked into support group curriculums, or they have financial education support groups, which are amazing. And I encourage you to, if you don't already do that on a regular basis, or you don't have something that you work into one-on-one advocacy or your support groups, I really encourage you to try and figure that out, because survivors need help with this stuff. I mean, we actually all need help with this stuff, which is probably why you're not doing it right now, is because you don't feel like you've got a really good handle on your own stuff, which I get. But this webpage has a bunch of information that will help you feel good about your finances and will make you feel confident about talking to other people about it as well. And also, secret, you don't need to feel like you're an expert on this stuff to introduce a conversation about it with folks and offer the resources. You can go on that journey together for sure. So I just this is your pep talk. This is me. I'm a cheerleader. Y'all are awesome. You should be talking about this stuff with survivors. Yay! And in a minute, I'm going to ask if you already are and how you do that. So be thinking about what you want to share about that. So banking and budgeting. We have information here on how to open bank accounts. Bank on Washington is a really great resource there. We have information about individual development accounts, money management tools. We also have these two things, a monthly budget worksheet and a wallet tracker, which I think are just handy to have a stack of in your office. Have them printed out. I'm showing you the wallet tracker right now. I did this. It was alarming, but you should do this. You should print this out for you, and you should do it and see how it works out for you. It's super eye-opening. It's basically just something you can literally keep in your wallet, keep in your bag, and every time you spend money, you write it down. It's kind of like those calorie counting things, when people are like, oh gosh, I just need to see like what I'm eating, like where the problems are, right? So it's the same thing, but it's for your wallet. It's for your money. So you like write down what you're spending, and then when you look at the week, you can say, oh, I spend a lot on lattes, right? But you can really it's a sort of a personal accountability thing, and it can really help you, and it can help survivors figure out like where's the money going, like why at the end of the month am I struggling? Is there something? Is it because I just don't have I don't have the resources, I don't have the money, or is it because or are there places that I can plan better? Are there places that I can make adjustments? So I don't feel like this at the end of the month, every month. So that's that. And then the monthly budget worksheet. I would suggest trying the wallet tracker first, because that's really sort of the first step. But here's just a monthly budget worksheet that you can, if a survivor's like, look, I am really stressed out about my finances right now, I just need help with that. And and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do about that because I'm really stressed out about my own finances, don't talk to me. I get it. Take a deep breath. And here are some resources that you can use to help somebody sit down and think about their budget. And it's okay if your budget's a mess. You can get your budget in order as well, but you can still help folks with theirs. Because you're not telling people what to do with their money. You're just offering the resources and the time to sit down for them to think about it, right? You don't have to be an expert. All right. Credit and debt resources. So we have free annual credit report. So this is the only place you can get an actual free report once a year. Everybody can get it. If you have never looked at your credit report, or if you have never downloaded, and gotten your free credit report, do it right after this webinar. Go do it, look at it, see what it says. It's very informative. And then you can encourage survivors to do this as well. Like if you're working with a survivor on getting financially stable, you can't do that. Nobody can do that if they don't know what's on their credit report, because what's on their credit report can really be hurting their ability to find housing, to get a job. There's so many things on the credit report that they may not even know that their abuser has stolen their identity until they look at their credit report. So it can be really, really eye-opening. And this, you can get it once a year for truly free. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to give a credit card number, but they're not going to charge you. This is the place to do it. Other places will say it's a free credit report, but then it's not exactly. Or, they'll ask for a credit card number. No, this is the place to go for the free one. There's information here too on credit scores. That you can't get for free. You always have to pay for that. It might be worth it for a survivor to do that. It might not. It just depends on what they see on their credit report. But there's information here on how to learn more about that and how to find it. There's information on debt relief, identity theft, because unfortunately that is absolutely an issue for survivors. Abusers use, steal credit card numbers, run up debt, continue to, open credit cards that they don't know about in their name because they know their social security number, that sort of thing. And so there's information here from the FTC on how to protect your identity and what to do if you think you're a victim of identity theft. We have a whole section on taxes, which makes me really excited, but I know people don't love taxes. I really love taxes, and I love it for survivors because so many times if they take the time to file their taxes, they get a bunch of money back, which is exciting for survivors and for all of us who might get money back when we file our taxes. So this information right now, I'm not going to click into it because it's 2016 info. Come January, I will have all this updated with 2017 numbers and information. And plug for the next Money Talk, which will be in February, it's always on taxes. So we will go in depth in the next Money Talk all about taxes and how you can help survivors tap into that cash that they might not really even realize they are entitled to. I do want to show you one thing though. Where is it? I'm going to click on, is this? So I'm just, for example, I'm going to click on this low income taxpayer clinic. The IRS website, irs.gov, is fantastic. Like, no, I have never encountered a government website that is so amazing. It is incredibly informative. It is easy to understand. It is easy to find things. Their search is amazing. If you're like, I don't know about that tax issue, and you plug it into irs.gov search, you're going to find really clear information about it. I cannot tell you how much irs.gov makes me excited, which tells you how much of a nerd I am about this stuff. But really, use irs.gov if you've got questions about tax, for your own tax questions. It is a really, really great website. Yeah, all right, I'm done singing the praises of irs.gov. All right, and then we also have a checklist here of tax issues for DV survivors from the National Women's Law Center. So that's a great resource around what do I even need to be thinking about specifically when working with survivors and talking about taxes. And last but not least, this section has information about financial education. So if you remember my my pep talk 5 minutes ago about taking on some of this stuff and helping survivors dig into their finances and helping them learn more about how to be financially stable, I think it's really, really important. And it does require you to do some learning about it, especially if it's not your comfort zone, which, I mean, this was not my comfort zone when I started this work, for sure. So I just want to say, I was not an economics major. I don't that's not where I was. But you can learn, you can get more comfortable with it. And you don't have to be an expert to introduce the topic with survivors and start that conversation and help folks, giving folks the time and the space to just dig in to their budget or their credit or something that's stressing them out right now around finances. And then here's some tools of different financial education curriculums and some other websites. There's the self-sufficiency calculator, which also is handy if you are, for anybody really, when you're budgeting, you can type in where you live and it gives you an estimate of, you type in where you live and what your family type is, how many of you are there, how many adults, what are the ages of the kids. It gets kind of specific, and then it'll give you a list of things that you, here, I'll just show you. It's easier to show you. So I agree. This is the calculator. So I'm going to type in my name, and I'm going to say I live in King County, because I do. Dink. And then you enter the ages of everybody in your household. So, you know, you do this, this, and that, right? So there's 4 of us. You hit next. Wow. And it gives you like, this is like the bare minimum. So it picked Bellevue for me, King County. You can get specific, I think, on some of the bigger cities. But it tells you, you know, for 4 people, what your wages would be to be self-sufficient, right? And like how much monthly expenses are in general and other things. And so it's just a way to, it can be a helpful tool to be like, oh, all right, well, that's what I need to make it work here. It also could be helpful for survivors who are like, well, I'm thinking about moving. I got a couple different options. Where should I, like, where, you know, like what's the cost of living where I'm thinking about moving to? You can put those in and get some information about that. So it's a handy tool. All right. And that is it for our financial education. Whoops. Let's go back to financial. Oh yeah, money and finances. So questions. Oh, look, we have a question. Yay, could you show us where, so Joyce asks, could you show us where IDAs are accessible in King County? Well, if we go back to, oops. Oh, come on. IDAs. My internet is very slow. I'm sorry. It's thinking hard, really hard about it. All right. So I think, this used to have, this looks super different than it used to. So, this is very different. It used to just have a list of counties with the programs in it. That is a really good question, Joyce. I will look into it and maybe even change this link. I just looked at it like a week ago too. That's so interesting. Because this gives you lots of information about IDAs, but it is not telling us how to find them in our area. So that is a good question. I will figure that out. I'll email you and I'll put it on the website. Thank you. Let me write that down. IDAs. And you know, and I'll try and find a link that has like by county, so you can find King County or any of the counties in the state. Good question. What else? Other questions? I'm going to look and see if anybody has their hand raised. I don't see any hands. If you're typing, keep typing. All right. I don't see anybody with questions at this point. But if you do, type it in or raise your hand. I'm going to move on to housing. So the next section of our EJ webpage is all about housing. So there's some information up here about finding shelter and housing and how to contact y'all. You know, if survivors are looking at this website, there's information about local programs and some information about Domestic Violence Housing First information, which is another project we have here at the coalition, and some of you may even be participating in, we have different communities who are doing a deep dive into this domestic violence housing first program, and there's more information about that here. So if you click here, it goes to our DV Housing First webpage. You can learn a lot more about that there. And then we have information about tenants' rights. So housing rights, what survivors can do to protect themselves and, get or keep their housing, which can be really challenging for survivors, as we all know. This brochure I'll click on is just specifically about the laws, rules around housing, so that we have here in Washington State. So who the DV housing protections are for, and the details around that, which is on the second page. So survivors can terminate a lease, and there's the steps on how to do that. Oftentimes, I've had many advocates who've done this in the past. So, I encourage you to, talk to survivors about that if that's something that they want to do, that there may be some protections for them in that process. They also have the right to get their locks changed. And there's also legal help available. So there's information about that. Other housing rights brochures in a bunch of different languages. Information about solid grounds tenant services, which they are here in Seattle, but they work, they have a little bit broader reach than just King County, I believe. Other information about tenants' rights laws from Washington Law Help. Again, a great website with a lot of info. Also information about renters who might be affected by foreclosure. This isn't happening as much as it was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but sometimes folks who are renting a property that's in the process of getting foreclosed, they can be in a really precarious situation, but they have rights, and that there's a link there that describes more about that. And then we have a couple of pamphlets, info sheets here, specifically geared towards landlords. So if you're doing domestic violence housing first work, you're probably already doing this stuff. But if you are thinking about implementing some of that in your area, or you're just wanting to build relationships with building owners or landlords in your area, there's some information that might help with that, and just information about, for landlords, about what the laws are that protect survivors, because sometimes landlords just don't even know what that is. They're like, what? There's a law I'm supposed to be following? I'm just going to kick these people out, right? So that there's information here. I will say we are looking into the Under Your Roof brochure. It's still 100% accurate, but it's super old and it looks kind of lame. So we are looking into revamping that, because who uses a brochure anymore? Like nobody even, seriously, brochures are so 10 years ago. So we're going to look into creating something that is like an infographic or something that's a little bit different, that's more useful with that same information. So stay tuned, that might get updated soon. All right, there's another question or comment. So Joyce says, I work at a shelter transitional program and I'm finding it is difficult accessing motel vouchers. Yes, so is it that your agency just runs out of motel vouchers very quickly, or are you getting fewer motel vouchers than you used to, or you're just not getting them at all? I guess if you could offer some clarity. Oh, you don't have any motel vouchers. I am unsure about that. We know that motel vouchers are useful in those dire situations. We also know that it's not something that is a great long-term solution for folks, and so whenever we can find a different solution that doesn't involve motel vouchers, I think that is better, and that is challenging as well. Does anybody else who uses motel vouchers or whose agency is able to get motel vouchers? If anybody has advice for Joyce, you can type it in or raise your hand, and I'll unmute you. This is a really good question. I don't see any hands, but I'm waiting for the typing. All right, I haven't seen any comments on that yet, Joyce. So you might not be the only one with that problem of not having motel vouchers or not having very many. So I will wait. Maybe folks are still typing, but I think it's good to think about. Because the problem is, I know that it's frustrating to not have a place to put folks, when your shelter's full and they need some place immediately. And is there a way you can help folks find something else? What else is there, or is there a way to offer flexible funds for that person to stay? Maybe the voucher isn't from the motel, but maybe there's a way to get flexible funding in order to offer that. Wilma says AdWise uses YWCA funding for motel vouchers and housing assistance. So so that sounds like what I was talking about, like a flexible fund account, having some sort of money from donations or from some other grant or contract that you can tap into to offer. So like you would offer a motel voucher, quote unquote, but you're really just paying for their motel night. You're paying the motel for those nights, and housing assistance. Any other comments on that? It is, so it's challenging, but I would also encourage you to not lean too heavily on the motel voucher thing if you can figure out a different solution. Again, flexible funding, being able to find that is hard, is challenging, but I know programs are doing it. And it sounds like AdWise has a solution. You may want to talk to other folks. I don't know, Joyce, where you are, but it sounds like maybe King County, other programs in your area to figure out, how they work that. Because again, having that flexible funding account that you can use for motel vouchers, but you could use for something else if it made sense for helping somebody stay in their housing, could be great. Housing is really, really challenging topic right now, though. I mean, this isn't news to any of you. I mean, housing is one of the biggest unmet needs, is the biggest unmet needs for survivors in Washington State. When we do the census with the National Network to End Domestic Violence every year, many of your programs participate in that. And when it's a one-day count, and so how many phone calls, how many crisis line calls did you answer? How many people were educated in the community? All of those things. And then what were the unmet needs? The vast majority every year of those unmet needs are for housing assistance, housing advocacy, and shelter. So we know that it's super challenging. All right. That is the housing. So I'm going to go back and pause for a moment. If anybody else has questions or comments about housing stuff, but also I forgot to pause during the money and finances part to ask you, what are the things that you are doing already that incorporate financial stability, financial education, money help with survivors? Like, are you offering Do you have a curriculum you use? Are you offering certain weeks during your support group cycle that focuses on that? Like what sort of things are you already doing that we can share with others? I don't see any hands, but I'll wait for you to type. Oh, Joyce says she facilitates a Money and You weekly workshop. Joyce, could I unmute you? Would you be willing to tell us a little bit more about that? All right, Joyce, I think you're unmuted.
Okay, hi there.
Hi.
Hi. I work at Broadview Emergency Transitional Program in Seattle, and so I've been running this for, I started last year, I believe, and one of my former coworkers did it ongoing for quite a while. We had a grant once upon a time. Now we don't have a grant for it, so I utilize curriculum as kind of a mixture from Hope and Power through the YWCA. I've been trained in that, and Broadview is part of Solid Ground, and so my coworker has. There was a program called Financial Boot Camp, so I've taken different different topics and curriculum from those different places, and I get information from the the FEPN network as well. Mm-hmm. The group ranges from from 2 to 6 people, and it's held here. We have childcare, so we work on budgets, monthly budget. We work on credit, debit, or debt. We have speakers. We have group speakers that come from in the community. We talk about banking, open up bank account for the unbanked. Let's see. There's a financial wheel, DV financial wheel, empowerment wheel. We go over that. Let's see. We're doing one next week on couponing. Some folks like to do that, and so we really strategize how to really focus on one's budget and how to stretch it out. And for example, we look at people if they get food stamps to kind of divide that by the number of weeks in a month, and kind of help budget that way to figure out how much one has for food stamps for each week, and then to augment that through local food banks.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fantastic. I didn't realize there was another group similar to the YWCA's group down in South King County that was happening. Is your group only accessible to the folks in the Broadview shelter?
Yes, and then former residents can come back as well.
Oh, that's great.
Because it is on site.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That is so good to hear.
Yeah.
And how did you get started with that? Did you start, was that just something that you were interested in, or did it start small? Like, how would somebody go about, jumping into that?
Through the FE, I've been interested in it for, I guess, quite a while. There's through the FEPN, the financial, oh my gosh, economic. Hang on, I've got the information.
Okay, we might be getting to it on our site too. Yeah.
The Financial Empowerment Network.
Yes.
They have an all-day training, and they go through the nuts and bolts of finances, and it's very good.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.
I believe that's free too.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And
it's on. There's ongoing. There's a lot of information on different websites. So there's Money and You. Well, there's this one, and then there's other websites that are out that you can find online.
Yeah.
And
some of them
for example,
I went over already in
yeah,
the finance, like we have
right,
there on our EJ webpage. So yeah, you can click around
yeah,
and explore. Many of them are from are recommended from the folks at the YWCA in South King County who have
yeah,
been doing these Hope and Power
yeah,
financial support groups for years now, and so they're coming from their depth of expertise and the places that they trust. And I encourage you to go to places that we do have on our website or the ones that Joyce just mentioned, because there's a lot of information out there about financial education, and some of it's bad. Like some of it is not good. And if you are new to it and you're wondering like, how do I even know if this is good or bad? It can be hard to tell. So that's why we have vetted, many of those and put the ones that we like and the ones that we know are solid, on our website, so that, you don't have to think about it that much, right? You can go there and start your exploration, instead of Googling it and hoping for the best.
yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Thank you, Joyce.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. I'm looking at the questions box just to make sure I haven't missed anybody's comment or question. Does anybody else have anything on either the financial education piece or housing? I don't see hands. Okay. We're going to move forward, but if you're typing in a question or a comment, keep going. We will get to it. Oops. All right. Healthcare. So we also have some information about healthcare because healthcare is a huge financial burden sometimes. And it can really impact your finances big time. So we have the link to the Washington Health Plan Finder right here. This is how folks who aren't getting insurance through their employer can find information about health insurance. It is open enrollment time right now. But fun fact, if you are a survivor, you can enroll at any point in the ACA. So you don't have to, if you miss the open enrollment period, but you are a survivor of domestic violence, there's a way to do that. However, right now is open enrollment time. It's a great time to be talking with survivors about their health care, if they have it, if they want it, if they want to explore whether or not they can, afford it, all of that stuff. It's right there. If they are applying for TANF, go to the Washington Health Plan Finder first, and we have links there. So if they go online and apply for TANF, it's so great if you can help them. If you're talking to them before they've done all this, tell them to go to Washington Health Plan Finder first and sign up, apply for Medicaid there. Because when they do that, it will pre-populate all of the forms for TANF. It is a huge time saver for survivors, and we all know that they need any time-saving techniques that they can find because they're super busy. So applying for Medicaid first through the Washington Health Plan Finder will help them pre-populate all their TANF stuff. It will notice based on their income that they are qualified for TANF, so that it will automatically like pop up and be like, hey, you should apply for TANF too. So it's much easier to go that direction than the other way. If they apply for TANF, they have to fill out all the TANF paperwork. And at the end, it says, oh, you also need to apply for Medicaid. This doesn't count as your Medicaid application. So then they have to go onto Medicaid and fill out all the stuff again. It doesn't pre-populate. Medicaid first, Health Plan Finder first is the way to go. And then there's also a link here around free healthcare clinics, because we know folks, undocumented folks, all sorts of folks don't have access to healthcare. And if you don't, it can be super hard. So here is a list that is kept fairly up to date by county of free healthcare clinics in your area. All right. Any questions or comments about healthcare? Just looking for hands. Nope. All right, I'm going to move forward, but if you're typing, please continue. All right, we have another category that I like to call good jobs. And it's kind of a pet project for me here. We sometimes don't have funding for it, which I heard somebody else talking about not having funding for it, so I totally understand. But it's something that we work on here at Wiskative around thinking about if we're thinking about economic justice for survivors, and we want that for survivors, we have to be looking at looking inward. We have to be evaluating whether or not we are like walking the walk, essentially. Because, we understand that you all staff at domestic violence programs, many of us are women, many of us are survivors. And, what are we doing to make sure that we're providing good financial stability, good jobs for folks, so that they don't have to think about their financial situation when it comes to their relationships, when it comes to your relationships. So that is something that we get to work on from time to time here. We have wages and benefits reports, surveys that we've done in 2011 and 2015. We may be doing it again soon, I'm hoping, but we'll see about that. And you can click on either of those to look at what we found out. So we basically survey our membership, you all, many of you may have taken it before, and we ask about wages and benefits and hours and on-call work and all of the things that can make or break a job, right? And in feeling like you feel supported and you love what you do and all of those sorts of things. So there's info there. We also have information here about employment and your rights. So oftentimes, we know that survivors, that the abuse survivors face impacts their ability to work, impacts their jobs. And so there's information and resources here about how to help a survivor think about safety at work. There's a safety plan for your safety at work. Legal protections. We have a law that allows domestic violence survivors to take leave from their employment without being demoted or fired because of that. So there are, they have rights, and there are links to those protections. We have a brochure that talks about these protections. I'll show you. Again, it's a little dated looking. It calls it our new law, but it's not new anymore. It's been on the books since 2008. But the blue section is for if you're a survivor, like what your rights are. The orange section is for advocates, for y'all, like what can you do beyond helping survivors? Like, you can also talk to employers in your community about this. Make sure folks know about it. Make sure that they know that you're around to help support them and answer questions and that sort of thing about domestic violence, about what's happening here. And then the green section is geared towards employers. This is a new law. You've got to follow it. Here you go. This one, the next one down, this legal protections, employment, and domestic violence is a great resource as well. It's a big Q&A from Legal Voice, which is a legal aid program here in Washington that talks more in depth about the law and the protections survivors have there. There's a booklet for safety at work for immigrants, or a Know Your Rights booklet from the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project in English and Spanish. And then resources from employers about the domestic violence leave law, but also just about this workplaces respond to domestic and sexual violence is really great. If you are working with an employer in your area about, being better at addressing domestic violence and understanding how to, like, what actually supports employees who are survivors, that website has a ton of good information about, sample policies, procedures, implementation, like all sorts of things about, how to respond well as an employer when you have an employee who's experiencing domestic violence. All right. Are there any questions about that section? Comments? Things that you're doing? Anybody working with employers in their communities? Anybody done anything like that? You can just raise your hand. I might not make you talk about it, but I might ask if you would. Nobody? Yeah, so if you aren't, or you haven't even thought about it before, this is a chance to just think about it. It's something that's out there within the realms of advocacy that can be really helpful for survivors if you have a large employer or even a medium-sized employer where a lot of survivors end up working in your community. It could be a great conversation to have before there's an issue, right? You can be like, hey, we're here, you're here, this is both of our communities, let's chat about this. All right, I don't see any hands or any questions or comments, so I will move forward. Oh, well, we're at the questions and comments portion here. I am going to go back really quickly and show you the other thing that we have that I wasn't going to talk about a ton, but I want you to know is a section on identity documents, because in order to do all of these things that we're talking about, jobs, getting on welfare, dealing with housing, dealing with healthcare, folks have to have identity documents, and we know that oftentimes survivors don't have those because they fled or they were destroyed by their abuser or whatever. So we have a list here of places and links and information that might be helpful for figuring out how to get new documents or recovering the old documents, and that sort of a thing, in order for them to access all of the things that we've talked about today. Yeah. All right. Any final questions, comments, anything that you really love and use on a regular basis, a resource around finances that you didn't see up here that I can add? I've got the IDA suggestion, so I'm going to go looking for that. But anything else? I don't see hands. Keep typing if you're typing, but also if you have any questions, things that didn't make sense, or something that you realized, you had a question about after we talked about a specific resource. Oh, Joyce suggests dealing with the holidays on a tight budget. That is such a great idea. We'll have something around that. I will go looking. Joyce, if you have something, there's a website, something that you use on a regular basis, you can just send me that link. I'll take a look at it and figure out how to get it up on the website. That's a great idea. And if you don't, that's fine. I'll go looking. Great idea. Others? Questions, comments? Things you wish were there? I mean, I wish there was like a magic button that just gave money to survivors. There's that fund, right? And you're like, I'm a survivor. I need some money. That does not exist. There used to be a fund, but that was somewhat like that advocates could apply for through the National Network to End Domestic Violence, but it's not. It is no longer. But if anybody knows about something like that, let me know. I'm still working on, I work a lot with welfare and TANF and with policy headquarters, and every time they ask me for a suggestion on how to make things better, I tell them that I think they should just give people money without all of the hoops to jump through. And they laugh at me and they say, "Oh, Tracy," and then they don't do it. But I'm still trying. Still trying. There's that. Alrighty, I don't see any hands or any more questions or comments in the box. So I'm going to move forward. Whoops, that was backwards. Forward. The next Money Talk will be February 22nd, 10 to 12, the same hour. And the topic will be taxes. It's always taxes in February. I love talking about taxes. I want you to get excited about taxes. There's so much you can do with survivors around tax time that can be super helpful in the money department. So, taxes! Come talk with me about taxes in February, please. A reminder about training hours. When you close out of this, or when I shut it down for everybody, a survey evaluation will pop up. Please do that survey evaluation. We do look at them. I look at them. I take your suggestions. And it's the way that you get credit for being on this webinar. So you don't want to forget to do that. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your week. If things come up and you have questions that you didn't feel like asking here, or you just didn't think about it until after the fact, I'm putting my email in the chat box. Pretty quick to respond over email. I'm less fast over the phone because I'm not always at my desk. But please shoot me an email with your questions or comments or suggestions for the website, for resources. I would love to hear from you. Have a wonderful day, everybody.